What's going on, guys? Ted from Immersion here, and I'm going to do another DM's Guild Spotlight video. This time we're doing Call to Arms the Warlord, an attempt by a Dungeons & Dragons designer to bring the Warlord class into 5th edition as a whole brand new 1 to 20 class. If you're curious to see how it works and my thoughts on it, stay tuned. Okay, so here it is. Schwalb Entertainments. This is Robert J. Schwalb is the person we're talking about. He was a designer on the Player's Handbook, the Monster Manual, Xanathar's Guide, Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica, Mordecai's Tome of Foes, and did design for a Song of Ice and Fire role-playing game from Green Ronin and the Shadows of the Demon Lord RPG. So there's some, history here and obviously some chops behind it. You can see it's a best copper seller. It was released in January of this year. 17 ratings for 4 stars. I'll be honest with you up front. It's $2.49 to buy it. So I'm not going to cover everything. I think it's close, in my opinion. We'll get into it. I think it's very close to being a good and well-balanced class for 5th edition. I think some of the mechanics are a little bit anti-5e, and I see that with a lot of homebrew stuff, where people will make things or try to replicate something that was from a previous edition, and they're trying to put too much of that in 5e, and there's a reason 5e is as simplistic as it is in its class design. But let's go ahead and dive in. All right, so a little forward. So basically what the Warlord is it's supposed to be a tough, tanky-ish buff class. And there's not really a traditional buff-only class in 5th edition. A lot of classes can generate buffs, but they do other things. So the best way I could describe it is like a fighter mixed with a paladin and a bard, I guess, in aspects. So here we go. D10 hit die, all armor, shield, simple martial weapons, wisdom and charisma saves, 2 skills from athletics, history, insight, intimidation, medicine, perception, and persuasion. So nothing too crazy there. And, you get your back, your starting equipment. So one of your main things is battlefield command. And for those of you who are curious, this is essentially bardic inspiration. Creature within 30 feet can hear you. You can do this a number of times equal to your charisma modifier. Remains for 10 minutes or until expended. But you can get this to recharge on a short or long rest from the start, unlike a bard who has to wait till level 5 to get the short rest recharge. Starts as a D4. Same thing works on attack rolls, saving throws, or ability checks. And it has to be after you roll, but before the DM tells you if you fail. It goes to a D6 at 5, a D8 at 9, a D10 at 13, and a D12 at 17. I'd have to look. I'm not positive that is... Well, actually, no. It's not the same as a bard, because a bard starts as a D6 in 5e. Goes up to a D12, and I think that goes at 6, 5, 11, 17, I believe. I'll look that up as we continue going through this. So next up is Commanding Presence, and this is sort of your paladin ish feature. And so if you think about it, right, you're going to have some things that right off the bat, you've got a Bard's Bardic Inspiration at level 1, and I'm checking that right now for the Bard. Yeah, so it is 60. So a Bard's goes out to 60 feet. This is a bonus action? Yeah. So they have half the range of a Bard. It still lasts for 10 minutes. The Bard starts, it goes a D6, a D8, a D10, a D12 for a Bard. So it starts at a D6, and everything else is pretty much the same, except that, again, it starts as a long rest for a Bard and goes to a short rest. This gets half the range and starts at a D4. So I guess that's the payoff there. But then you get this thing called Commanding Presence. When you would make an attack on your turn, you can forego making the attack to allow a friendly creature within 10 feet of you to make an attack instead. If the target can hear you, it can take a reaction to make one weapon attack. The range of your presence increases to 30 feet at 10th level and 60 feet at 20th level. So I don't necessarily have a problem with this at the start. Oh, and I guess to say this, I'm going to go over the base class and then one of the subclasses, and that's it. And I'll leave the rest of the subclasses for you guys to find out if you want to pick it up. So it's Paladin-esque in that a lot of future features tie off of this as almost like an aura. But a Paladin's aura, they get at level 6 at the start for the first aura, and that range is 10 feet to level 18, at which point it increases to 30. This starts at 10, goes to 30 at 10, and 60 at 20, and that may be a little too much, and we'll talk about that. Also, this can be very strong if you have a rogue in the party. I'm not saying that it's unbalanced, but you're just sacrificing one of your attacks to let them take a reaction to make an attack. If they do that, it is a new round, therefore that triggers sneak attack again for the rogue, and you do get multiple attacks, so all you're basically choosing to do is still take the attack action, give up an attack, and let them make an attack, so you can potentially get double sneak attack, or sneak attack at an additional time in a combat round. Also, at 2, you get Inspiring Speech. You can deliver a stirring speech on a short rest. You and any creatures that can hear you gain temporary hit points. This part I don't like. The amount of temporary hit points each creature gains is equal to the roll of the creature's hit die. That's a little just too... It's unnecessarily complicated. So if you have a rogue in the party, it's a D8. A wizard, it's a D6. A barbarian, it's a D12. Everybody rolls a separate die. And that, it's not, like I said, it's a nitpicky thing. But I think you should make it equal to your battlefield command die. Like, that's what it should be. The amount of temporary hit points each creature gains is equal to a roll of your battlefield command die. And that way, basically, you roll the die, and then it's kind of pretty simplistic, right? And that way, eventually, everybody could get a D12. I mean, it happens over a short rest, so it's not like going to be a super abusable thing. But I think that would just tighten things up a little bit and make it a little cleaner. You get your military stratagems, which you get at 3, 7, 11, 15, and 18. So it is very fighter in its progression, and that's going to be your subclass options. Ability scores are 4, 8, 12, 16, and 19. Nothing crazy there. Extra attack, 2 attacks at 5. This is a weird one, though. 3 attacks at 11. You do not get a 4th attack at 20, and you do not get Action Surge. So this would be the only class in the game that gets 3 attacks for the attack action and doesn't have the other abilities, right? So, like, it's just it's different. And I'm not saying this is necessarily a bad thing. It does get a lot of use, especially because you could always forego one of your attacks at 11 to let somebody else attack and still make 2 attacks. So be on par with every other martial class aside from the fighter, but constantly get one more attack from someone else in the party. And I'm sure that's probably why that's included there. So you can still have your 2 attacks and let somebody else attack as well. I'm not sure how I feel about it. Like I said, it's just different than what we're used to. Not necessarily a bad thing, and probably would need to be play tested to see how it works in my mind, but I'm curious what you guys think. Battle Leader. At 6th level, allies within the range of your commanding presence deal additional weapon damage with their attacks. See, here's where we start to get a little wonky. The amount of extra damage equals your charisma modifier. So let's say your charisma modifier is a 5 at level 6. Might not be, but let's say it is. That's when allies are within 10 feet. In 4 levels from now, any ally that attacks an enemy for free, nothing else added to this, any enemy that attacks any ally that attacks an enemy with a weapon within 30 feet of you at level 10 could add potentially 5 to every damage roll they make. That's just an always on thing. I feel like that's a little too strong, especially especially given the range it'll have at 10. I'm not really worried about the 60-foot range at 20 because it's at level 20, and how far do you ever get that often? But just a flat damage boost. I mean, if you have, let's say, a fighter, right? You're going to have multiple attacks at level 6. You're going to have Action Surge. You might have your stat, however high it is, maybe at 5, plus maybe something like a dueling, plus a +1 weapon, which would mean, so let's use that example. You're a fighter with a 20 strength, a +1 weapon, and dueling. So you've got 5 plus your +1 weapon is 6, plus 2 from dueling, plus the die. We'll call it a d8. So right there, what do we say we're at? We're at 8. So it's a d8 plus 8 damage for every hit. If you're within 10 feet, or I guess 30 feet if we're talking about this at 10th level, or no, if you're within 10 feet, you're going to add 5 to that. So that means your level 6 fighter would be doing a d8 plus 13 points of damage with the capability of doing 4 attacks with action cert at level 6. It just seems like a lot, and I don't think I'm wrong in saying this, but again, I also feel like the aura range is part of the problem too. Also at level 6, you get Call to Arms. When you roll initiative, you and each friendly creature that are within your range of your commanding presence, here we go again, each roll a bonus die and add the number rolled to their initiative. The bonus die is the same size as the bonus die granted from your battlefield command feature. So again, another one of those things where I think it could be cleaner and just say, when you roll initiative, roll your battlefield command die. All allies within range of your commanding presence get this as a bonus to their initiative check. That, I think, is a lot cleaner worded and makes it a little easier than everybody rolling an individual die. All right, we're at 10 now. You can spend 1 minute speaking words of encouragement and support to help your companion shake off fatigue and injury. Each friendly creature that can hear you can spend any number of hit dice to regain hit points without having to finish a short or long rest. In addition, each creature that does spend at least 1 hit die in this way can remove 1 level of exhaustion if it has any levels of exhaustion. Once a creature has removed a level of exhaustion from your use of this class feature, the creature must finish a long rest before it can do so again. So I'm okay with this feature. There's the spell Catnap that lets you do basically a short rest in a very short period of time. Though Catnap does require you to expend a resource in using a spell slot. This is over the course of a minute, and it lets you take a short rest in a minute, which is good. It will speed up things for sure. I don't think that's too bad. It does mean that you could take a lot more short rests for healing a lot more frequently, though, with it only taking a minute to basically get the benefit of a short rest. Though, again, it's only the healing aspect of a short rest, not like the recharge of whatever features recharge on a short rest. And buckling in 1 level of exhaustion is really nice. Again, that would be like a greater restoration spell, which would be a 9th level spell. I'm sorry, 9th level spell. A spell you would have gotten at level 9, a 5th level spell. And you can just do this for free. I do like that they limited it to that can only happen once per long rest, so you can't just clear off a whole bunch of exhaustion real quick. I don't know. What do you think about this? Too much, or it's good? Advantageous action. At 14th level, you can use the help action as a bonus action. Okay, that's a reasonable feature. In addition, when you take the help action, the target can... This is also worded weird. In addition, when you take the help action, the target can benefit from any one of the following effects that you choose. You end the frightened condition on 1 creature within 30 feet of you that can hear you. It just doesn't make sense with what it already established for itself. You can use the help action as a bonus action. In addition, when you take the help action, the target of the help action can benefit from any one of the following effects that you choose. But then it says you can end the frightened condition on 1 other creature within 30 feet of you that can hear you. The target benefits from one of the following, but then you end the condition on somebody else within 30 feet. It just doesn't read cleanly. You grant 1 creature within 5 feet of you temporary hit points equal to your charisma modifier, and you touch a living creature that has 0 hit points, that creature regains 1 hit point. It just doesn't make any sense. Because to use the help action, you gotta be near whatever person you're trying to help. Or you're trying to get the help action on to provide the advantage on. But it also says the target can benefit from any of the following. So is it the target that you're helping? So whoever chooses it? It just doesn't, I don't know. I get what they're trying to do. I just don't think it's worded cleanly enough. I think they could use some tweaking to really make sense what they want to say. And then at 20, Friendly creatures within the range of your commanding presence add their charisma modifier to their saving throw. Okay, so this is like a paladin's ability at level 6, although remember, at level 20, now this is all allies within 60 feet of you are adding their charisma modifier to their saving throws, whereas a paladin would only have 30, which is kind of like their whole thing, the auras, so it seems like you might be taking a little bit of the paladin shtick away. Additionally, whenever a creature would roll a bonus die from your battlefield command class, this is where it gets a little crazy, they can roll an extra bonus die. Oh, okay, my bad. They can roll an extra bonus die and use either result. That's not so bad. I thought it was add them together when I first read it, so that's okay. You just basically, you'll have a d12, and you could be like, I'm going to use it to try to get, I rolled a 1. Well, let's roll a second time. Maybe you'll roll better. So that's the base class. I've already discussed my issues with it enough. I think it has a lot of stuff that is kind of wonky, and there's a lot of, I feel like there's some, resources to handle, but things need to be cleaner. And then there are several subclasses, but we're going to jump to the bottom one because I think it's just going to stress some of the issues with things that need to be cleaned up. And that is Stratagem of the Supreme Tactician. Beginning at 3rd level, when you choose this stratagem, whenever you roll initiative, you gain a tactics die, which is a d4. While you have this die, any friendly creature to you within 60 feet of you that can hear you can roll the tactics die as a bonus action, as a bonus die when making an attack roll. Once rolled, the tactics die is lost until you regain it at the start of your next turn. The tactics die disappears if the combat ends. You start your turn and no one has rolled the tactics die, you can trade out the die for a die of the next larger die, such as a d4 becomes a d6, a d6 becomes a d8, and so on. You see what I'm saying? This is just confusing. You have this, but you also have your commanding presence, your, the hell is it called? Your battlefield command die, which is not to be confused. So this starts as a d4, and you just have it every time you roll initiative at the start of any turn. And this now works out to 60 feet. You can roll a tactics die as a bonus die when you make an attack roll. And once rolled, it's lost till the next round of combat. But if no one rolls it, and anybody can choose to roll it whenever they want, as long as it's available, if you don't use it, the die type goes up. So you could potentially have your commanding, whatever that die we just talked about was, battlefield command die, plus this tactical die. So theoretically, later on, you could be rolling 2d12 to add to your attack roll. Again, I realize that's kind of a hyperbolic statement, but I don't know. It's just more things and resources and things to track. So it just makes things more complicated. And yes, the obvious answer is don't take this subclass, and you don't have to worry about it. But it exists in this document, and I thought this was just a good example of something that needs to be how things can be tightened up and tweaked. At 7, student of history, gain proficiency in the history skill, and whenever you make a history check, your proficiency is bonused. Nothing, or is doubled rather. Sorry, nothing crazy there. Indomitable offense. Whenever a creature rolls a bonus die granted by your battlefield command feature, the creature also gains half the number rolled on that die as a bonus action. The bonus remains until the start of your next turn. They don't specify whether it's round up or round down. That's something you should do. But this is, again, it's just messy. So at level 11, your battlefield command die, I think, is a d8. Maybe a d6. It's definitely a d6. It might be a d8. But now you roll it whenever you make an attack roll, ability check, or saving throw, and then you add half that number to your AC. It's just a little wonky, right? I feel like you could tweak that a little bit. Whenever you gain a tactics die, you gain an additional tactics die to a maximum of 2 dice. The second tactics die can be used like the first die, and the tactics die increases in the same. So all of the complications and things we were talking about the tactics die, well, now you have 2. So you now, as the warlord, have to keep track of 2 tactical dice. You need to keep track of your battlefield command dice. It's just a lot of resource management, and I think that some of that's unnecessary. And then at 18, whenever a creature rolls a 1 or 2 on a die granted from your battlefield command feature, the creature can re-roll the die until it rolls a 3 or higher. I don't know. That just seems complicated. Like, I feel like it's like reroll ones and twos, like the Great Weapon Mastery attack feature. But that's like reroll ones or twos, and then keep whatever the second die result is. But it's reroll ones or twos until you get a 3 or higher, so you're gonna be just like sitting there rolling until you get a 3 or higher. It's just messy. You know what I mean? I think that's the best way I can describe it. And then after that, there's just some text. So, what are my thoughts on the Warlord class? I think I pretty much gave you it as we went through that document. There will be a link in the description if you'd like to pick one up for yourself, a copy, and see, what else is out there. I don't know. It's close, like I said at the start. It's almost there. It's almost the ideal, like a good, thought out, unique subclass. Or sorry, subclass class. But the problem is, secondary problem, I think this could be better suited as a fighter subclass or a paladin subclass, and not its own levels 1 to 20 class. It's, the part of the reason they made the 5th edition the way they did was that, like, they wanted to cover all archetypes. And the fact that I'm describing to you this class as a mixture of a fighter, a bard, and a paladin proves that the core functions of this exist. Or make it a bard subclass even would be fine, the warlord. But yeah, it's just a mixture of existing class features, and some of the things, as I discussed, are just a little messy, and they could be tweaked and like slightly alter the wording to just make things cleaner and easier to use. And I think with those tweaks and maybe a reduction in some of the craziness of some of the subclasses, it could really find a good spot at your table. I know it won't be finding a spot at mine just because I don't think it's necessary. But I'm curious to see what you guys think. Leave it in the comments down below, and I'll see you next time.